Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be diving in to Franchise Hockey Manager 11 and giving you a beginner's guide on how to start your first franchise. If you're new to the game or you're just looking for some tips to get rolling, you're in the right place. We're going to cover everything from setting up your league, choosing your team and getting familiar with the essential tools and settings that will help you build your own dynasty. Stick around to the end because we're giving away a free copy of the game to one lucky viewer. Grab your GM hat, hit that like button if you're excited, and let's get into it. So the first thing you need to do when you've got the game loaded is work out which one of three types of game you want to play. You get your standard game, so that's your 2024-2025 season. You got a historical game, which goes back to about 1906, I believe, or you've got custom game, where you can build your own league, promotions and demotions, and just run it as you see fit. For the purposes of this tutorial though, we're going to be going for a standard game. So nice and easy at the very beginning, you give your game a name. For the purposes of this, we're just going to call it tutorial because I am super creative. You will get the ability later on down the line. So if you're not watching this on release, you might get a kind of a mid-season data update. But right now, opening night only. If you want to be the actual GM of the actual team that you actual pick, then you select that option. If you want to play your mates, that one. Nice and easy. Press OK and the game moves on for you. So one short loading screen later, you are going to be shown the list of playable leagues. So with this one, you got the ability to deselect all of them. You only get the NHL and the AHL. You can select all of them if you've pressed that one, or you've just gone, no, I can't be bothered to click that one button. With this one though, the more leagues you have loaded into the game, the slower your game is going to go. However, the more detailed your game is. For the purposes of this tutorial though, I am just going to turn them all off. So we've got the NHL and the AHL. Press OK, it's going to do a little bit more loading. After this, you are going to be greeted with this pop-up, challenge mode. Now if you enable challenge mode, what it does is it will just restrict a few little bits and pieces just to make that game just that little bit more challenging. Hence the name. So you will not be able to go into commissioner mode or the player editor mode and change any bits and pieces. You're playing realistic like I usually do, you're not going to need to do that. Certain league rules and settings are also disabled. You will also lose the ability for long-term simulation, so you won't be able to select autoplay until the Stanley Cup playoffs, for instance. So it gives you a lot more of a challenge. With this one, for the purposes of the tutorial, it is completely up to yourself. If you've never played the game, you want the full suite of options, it's probably better to select no. However, there is an argument that actually selecting yes at the very beginning and taking away some of the options that could confuse you is also a good choice. For the purposes of the tutorial though, let's say yes. Once you've picked the challenge mode, you get to set up your manager. So, Joe Average was the guy that I picked last year. This year, I'm going to make Toby Toriel for tutorial because I'm super clever. A lot of this is purely fluff. You will get the ability to pick your nationality. Me being a Brit, I'm going to quickly scroll down and I will find England. Second nationality, if you have one. If you don't, skip it. It does manage to pick up the list of towns, so if you really want to be specific on where you come from, so say for instance I come from Glasgow, obviously by my accent I don't, but I can select Glasgow, Scotland. You can select your date of birth, which doesn't have a massive impact on the game. It will not stop you from being able to choose a team if you are 18 compared to 80, purely fluff. Once you've done that, you then get a big wall of text about what type of person you want to be in the game. So you get two options. You can either be the general manager. So you are the person that is going out, is hiring the players, the coaches. However, you are not the coach. So you do not get to be at the games and alter the lineups and the coaching choices. You're not that person. You are kind of more hands-off, higher up, dealing with the day-to-days, the finances. You're the boss. You can, however, be both. This is how I usually play the game. I like to be all over the shop when it comes to picking the players, setting the coaches, setting the tactics, getting my assistant to do the training, that sort of thing. Underneath that, if you have got a team in mind that you want to play, you just go in and you select one of them. At the moment, I have not got, and we'll cover that in a moment later on down the line, we've not got the images set for any of the AHL teams. It's a nice easy fix, we'll do that later. However, for the NHL, they are all here. Last year I did do the Anaheim Ducks, and I really loved them do them again because I absolutely adore their brand new 90s logo. But let's go and we'll pick Utah. They're the brand new, not brand new, but brand new club. If you want to, you can also select to be the national coach at the exact same time. With this one, you get kind of certain times through the year, you will get to pick the lineups and the rosters for the national teams and get to watch those play out. It's nice, it's not super relevant. For the reputation, if, for instance, we did start unemployed, we get to pick roughly what sort of reputation we are, and that influences what teams will be interested in you should you decide to start unemployed and look for jobs. Again though, let me just set back up the Utah Hockey Club. There we go. All right, so moving on, we've got these 4 options here. So 1, cannot be fired. It's as simple as that. If you are playing on a standard mode, it's grayed out because we're doing challenge. But it means that if you fail in your owner goals or the team is just doing really poorly, they will not fire you. So on July 1st, now this is one purely, mainly anyway, for editing purposes. The way the game is set up is on July 1st is when you can go in and you can make the edits to the teams, the leagues, the structures, and then from July 1st onwards for the rest of that year, they are kind of set. I will caveat that by saying that is kind of the back end behind the scenes, change the entire world, not realistic stuff. The day-to-day is changing of the seating prices and the building of the new bits and pieces for your stadium. That's not included under that one. So randomised starting scout bias, I couldn't tell you. I'm going to be completely honest, I never turn it on, but I'm going to guess it randomises the bias of the scouts. You take from that what you will. And if you want a completely fresh start and you don't want to see what happened in your world before you turned it on, you can just go in and tick no stats and / history. The remaining 4 options are a kind of a weighting system, whether or not you want the players to be better based on their stats. You can increase that one. I always leave them as they are. For the purposes, again, of this tutorial, leave it alone, press OK, and then you get this one. So, what kind of manager do you want to be? This is where you're going to get to pick it. You get to pick your offensive preference. What type of team do you want to build? What sort of players? Do you want them to be a very defensive team, always at the back, not maybe passing forward so often? You want them to be solid from the back. Do you want them to be defensive? Bit of both. Do you want them to be always going for the goal or practically living in the goaltender's face? So that's where you can pick those. Same for physical. Do you want them to be not very physical, slightly physical, bit rough, proper goons? For the GM templates, this is what sort of general manager you're going to be. Obviously, if you've picked head coach only, you won't get this option. So, you're going to be balanced. Your points for general manager, which is this section here, are spread 7 across everything. They can go up to 13, and the higher one stat is, the better you are. So, however, you can change that preference. I mean, you can go completely custom if you want. You can say, yep, I'll have loads of points in that one. I don't want to have any discipline because I don't discipline my players. And there you go. So you can set it custom if you want to, or you've got some pre-made ones. So balanced again, 7 across the boards. Disciplinarian means you are very, very, you don't tolerate any misbehaviour. If they do, you're probably going to send them elsewhere. However, your own self-preservation for getting jobs is slightly less, and the general player management is a little bit lower. And again, easygoing will be the opposite version of that one. Everybody likes you, but it may not be good for the team. Negotiator, you are better at negotiating, so there's a good chance the players will take slightly better deals. You're better at player management for the player side of things. However, discipline, self-preservation, again, a little bit low. Politician is pretty much the opposite of that one. You are primarily interested in keeping your own job. So it does mean that you can see right there. You can convince the owner to be patient with you in circumstances that might jeopardize your job security. So yeah, less chance of you being fired, basically. Or you got wheeler dealer, which means you are a super negotiator at pretty much the expense of everybody else. So everything else is not brilliant, but yeah, you can convince players to sign for less money, or get the GMs to give you more for less. Awesome. Let me just set that back to balance for the purposes of this tutorial, and then we will move to coaching. So again, exactly the same as the last one. We've got a custom option here if you do want to set it to be anything particular. If you're setting up a team that is primarily based around youth coaching, then you might want to up your prospects. You might want to update your player motivation potentially. But again, much like the GM ratings, there are custom versions. So you want to be a defensive tactician. You want a lot of defensive training. You want to be coaching your defensemen. You can set that up there. Or you want to deal with the fundamentals. You want to make them physical and sort of defensive and offensive, but maybe not brilliant at coaching the goalies or just tactics in general. You can set that up. And there's the Good with Kids one that I mentioned a second ago. So you can go through these. Each one of these will set it up. You do get, at the end of the year, you can get a point that you can then start putting into your stats and improving them. This is kind of your guideline. This is your basics. This is how you're going to set your coach up. All right, so we've gone through. We have created our player. Here is Toby Toriel. Here he is, GM, head coach, the Utah Hockey Club with their fairly basic Photoshop logo, if we're going to be completely honest. But as I briefly mentioned and alluded to earlier, if we do go and have a look at their farm teams, we are very logoless. And if we keep working our way, thanks game, if we keep working our way through the AHL, the Gulls don't have their logo. None of them do. So I think that's the next thing that we need to sort out quickly. And it's nice and easy. I'll show you how. First thing you need to do is head to forums.ootpdevelopments.com and then head in to the Franchise Hockey Manager 11 FHM mods section. When you are there, there is a load of them. However, if you go into this one here, the updated list of release mods as of FHM11 launch. However, if you are watching this video down the line, that may be slightly different there. If you go in, you are going to find a list of every single mod that's being compiled here. The one that we look at the moment is this one here, the FHM10 Complete Logo Pack by Renisti. You can go in here, you can just hit the Google Drive one, come into here, select that option, hit download, and it'll put it into a nice little zip file for you. We'll see you on the other side once it's downloaded. Okay, now once your file is downloaded, you need to know where exactly you need to put it into your FHM files. It does depend on where you've got it installed, but the easiest way I find to go and find that folder is if you go to File, just go back to the Start screen for a minute, pop yourself into Settings, go into the MISC section. You can kind of see it here, but you can go into the troubleshooting and go to this button here, and it just loads it straight up for you. What you would then do is you would get your zip file, get it opened up, and you will see 4 options here. One for logo, one for leagues, one for tournaments, and one for trophies. What you need to do is go in to your save game folder, find your file, find your graphics folder, and you will see these are exactly the same. Just grab all of those, drop them in, and wait for it to do its thing. Okay, if you've done all of that and your game is still open, you're going to see this. Now, it doesn't matter if you move around, it's still showing the same files that were there when the game was opened. So what we need to do is we need to get the game closed down, and we need to get it reloaded. However, if you are going to do that, just make sure you save beforehand. Otherwise, we lose all the work that we've just done. Right, via the magic of video editing, we'll see you in just a second. We now have accurate logos, all of the AHL teams. This does work on, as long as you can find the images, it works on any club you need. It also works with player faces if you want to download a player face pack. If you want custom trophies, you can upload and add all of those. I do know as well that there are some teams out there that have changed their name. For instance, if we pop to the NIHL, then there are the Berkshire Bees and the Romford Raiders, whose logos are a little wrong that we just need to fix as well. I think they're Romford IRC, and that's B's IRC, I think, anyway. But yeah, you can go in and you can customize and change any of the original logos. With your logos in place, with the game loaded, you are ready, finally, to start. And you get a nice little message from the owner. So Ryan Smith, he does have demands for the season. We need to be top quarter. He's given me 84 million, and that's the current payroll. So I got a bit of money, but you get a nice little welcome message from the owner. First thing that I'd recommend for anybody who is just starting this game up is to go into the manager options and have a look at the team control section. Team control is where you can actually go in and set what you do and do not want to take care of. As I mentioned earlier, I have no interest in doing the training, so I can go in there and I'll tell my assistant to do that for me, and he's going to do it to the best of his abilities. Some of these may be grayed out. For instance, if you are the head coach, you will not be able to do the financial settings. I also don't particularly care about giving him the jersey numbers, so I will set that to the assistant as well. But things like setting your lineup, setting your tactics, moving your players up and down between your farm teams, signing, releasing players, reacting to trades when they come through from other teams, doing the draft, if you're in a league that has a draft, that is, managing your staff, renewing the contracts, and setting your finances. All of that you will have the ability to do if you want to, not if you don't. So you can just turn them all off. So all human, all assistant. But again, for the purposes of the tutorial, I don't care about that, and I don't care about that. For those that really want to get into the nitty gritty and they want to set their lines for that farm team, or they want to pick the staff that will run that farm team, you can go in and you can turn them on or off here. Down in the bottom left corner, we get the news settings. So if we quickly head back here, for instance, you get certain news stories that will pop throughout the year. However, some of these may or may not be of interest for you. So for instance, if I was playing in a German division, I don't want to know what's going on with the hockey league. I can just turn that one off. I definitely wouldn't want to know what's going on with Utah if I was playing in the NIHL, so I'd turn that one off. Depending on what league and what team you are, some of these may turn themselves on automatically, like the Stanley Cup playoff news is. But you can go through, say, for instance, I want to know what is going on with the Hartford. I can turn that one on, and then I would get all the information about what is going on with Hartford. Or I can go, right, I don't want to know about their minor awards, I don't want to know about their injuries, and you can fine-tune what you do and do not get coming through. I will say some of these messages will stop your sort of skipping forward day by day. So again, if you don't want to know what contracts they've signed, just go through, fine-tune that section there to make sure you're getting the right types of messages coming through, and also that your team control settings are exactly what you want to do. You've also got in the bottom right corner an option to select when the autoplay, which is up here, and if you're on the non-challenge mode, you will get a lot more of these autoplays. But the game can stop when certain things happen, like if you've got a player injured for one of these specific times, it will stop and it will tell you. If they get a day-to-day injury, if there is a player that is above a certain star on waivers that you can try and pick up, it will stop the game and it will tell you. When you get a personal message, when you get a trade proposal, or when you get an update on an injury, the game can stop its auto-simming forward and it will let you know. So again, before you move a single day forward, check all of these and make sure you've got the right ones turned on. Once I'm done setting up what tasks I do and do not want to do, then surely I'd be looking at the players next. But you would be wrong. The next section that I would look at would be the staff. So if you go into your team, go to the staff section and we'll get here. So this is where the staff, I guess you could say, sit. So at the moment, you can see the owner, top left-hand corner. It's Ryan Smith. He thinks we're untouchable. His confidence in me right now is very, very high. Excellent. Then you get me. So you can see here, I am the GM and the head coach. If, for instance, you were just the head coach, you'd see the GM here, the head coach would be here. So you can see, here I am, that's how much I'm getting paid, that's when my contract expires. We have our assistant coach, Corey Swab, he's 53, he's getting paid just under 100 grand. His contract expires next month. Am I going to renew it? Ooh, who knows? We then get our finances. So our budget at the moment, we have 4.2 million that we can spend per year on staff. Right now we are 4.259, so we're actually almost 60 grand over our budget. I haven't even started yet. Do not blame that on me. Down the bottom, we get the list of our coaches. So not only is Corey our assistant coach, he's also the goalie coach. He is very good at what he does. He's probably going to be renewed next year. We look at our defensive coach, Curtis. He is above average for coaching defenders and for prospects. He is below average at offensive training, which is fine for a defensive coach. And he is above average on defensive training. Sadly, it's not very good like Corey, but it does mean that in the future we may look at the free agents and replace him with somebody else. We move on to the offensive coach. We've got Jeff Bess. He is above average at coaching the forwards. He's all right at the prospects. He is good at offensive training, and he's all right at defensive training. So again, I would probably keep him around. We look at our skills coach. He is average at physical, and he is good at coaching prospects. And then finally, we've got Dave Zanobi, who is our trainer, and his training skill is very good. So at the moment, looking at the list, there's nobody that I would probably want to fire straight away. I mean, Mitch, at the moment, he is one that I could probably just bin off. He isn't doing any work for me here. He's not doing any work for me here. I don't know what your role in this company is. So for the purposes of the tutorial, we could change his job. I don't know why we'd put him as head coach. That's my job. If we wanted him to be a scout, we can select that one. If we wanted him to be the trainer, which is down here, we would select that one. However, no. If we don't want him, we can release him. We'll pay 26 grand. But it does mean that our yearly cap has increased, and now we have money to buy a new member of staff. So if we did want to pick up a new staff member, we can go into our free agent section here. It does take a few moments to load up. We can then filter by the type of person that we are looking for. So in this circumstance, given how good the rest of them are, I would probably look for a scout. Press OK, and it brings up a list of scouts. Speaking of. So in order to scout, what you need to do is you need to go into your team section. You need to go into scouting. When you're in here, it will give you a map of the area that you're looking at. Right now it's the United States, but there are 4 other options. The way that scouting works is it's based on a color grading system. So the more cooler the colors, the more that you kind of know about the area, the more scouting coverage you have about it, and the more better informed you are about the players coming through. The warmer the colors, the less information that you have in the area, the less well informed you are. So for instance, you look at Canada and you look at the United States, for instance, they are just starting to edge into the cooler side of the spectrum, whereas we move to Western Europe, we're beginning to move into the yellow, warmer section. If we move to Eastern Europe, then we know even less about it. You can see the numbers here out of 20 about how much knowledge we have. If you go to the rest of the world though, where it is the rest of the world, we can't put it on a map, but you can see here that they are 6.2, so they are looking at probably quite red. And we know very little about what is going on in that area, and any players that we look at, we pretty much know next to nothing about. Now, we might want to improve our scouting. We might want to go in to Western Europe. We might want to go, okay, well, we want to know what is going on in Switzerland, in Denmark, in Finland, in Sweden, because there are some great players that come through over the years. In order to do so, we would go into the hiring scouts section. We would look at the Western Europe section, and then we would try and work out which player, based on which area, we want to sign. So we can see here, this is their ability to evaluate the abilities of their players. This is where they can evaluate the potential of that player. So we'll come on to players. Appreciate you've not seen them yet, but players themselves will have a ability, current ability, and a potential. And we can see in a minute how well they get on. So this guy here is based in an area that I will literally never be able to pronounce. However, let's go into the potential section. We've got a couple of people here that are excellent at looking at potential. This guy here, he is excellent looking at abilities. So what we can do is we can right click on him, we can hire him, we'll say over 3 seasons. It does drop depending on how long you want him to be for. The more you want to get him to commit, the less you have to pay him per year, but you have to pay him every year. So if we select him, we select OK, and now you can see these here have moved in. So we know more about these areas now. The articles, the information about these leagues when we get the scouting will be better. What you can then do is you can go into priorities and you can say, all right, scouting team, this is what I want. I want you to make sure that anybody on my watch list at the moment is your first priority. Once you've done that, you look at the prospects. Once you've done that, you look at the leagues that you've been assigned. Once you've done that, you look at the free agents, look at the internationals, then look at the other leagues. So it kind of works its way down on a priority basis. For the maps, we say, right, look at this region, and work its way down. If we want it region by region, we say, right, you look down these areas. So it gives you kind of a gradient of how you want to set up. Maybe you are quite keen on having prospects coming through. So you just have it picked at that, and then they'll spend more time looking at the prospects. If there's nothing to do there, they will then look at the watch list. Let's move that back. If you are in a different area, you might find that these are a slightly different way around. If you are managing in a German league, you're not going to find Canada and US at the top. You'll probably find Western Europe. However, if you want to poach maybe some Canadian youth people before they get into a draft, maybe move that one up. You've got a watch list as well. So you may find that there is a particular player you quite like the look of and you want the team to keep scouting him. So you can just right click on that player, add him to the watch list, and you'll get updated information. So you can go in and just see how he's getting on and if he is somebody that you do eventually want to sign. Tournaments themselves, there are tournaments that come up on a semi-regular basis. So at the beginning of the month, you will get a notification coming through from your scouts saying, which one of these tournaments do you want to go to? So if you want to, you can click and drag. So maybe you want Chris Armstrong to go to that one. I can't because we're halfway through a month, but you can move those around. You can, if you want to, get the AI to do it for you. All right, so we've come a long way in the almost half an hour that it's been since you started up the game. What we haven't done yet, and what we're about to do, is go and look at the roster. So if we open that one up, this is every single player that is currently on the roster for the Utah Hockey Club. It's going to be a little bit of terminology here because there are different ways and different things that we need to look at. So we have, first of all, the active roster. So these are the people that are all currently sitting in the Utah Hockey Club's dressing room, the roster. These are the people that will be playing day in, day out for Utah. However, if we then move to contracts, you will see every player that has a contract with that association. So you can see, if we look at the active roster, there are 26 players currently sitting actively. However, if we look at contracts, there are 46. So there are 20 out there that are within our organisation that are not sitting on our active roster. Best way to look at that is probably by going to the depth chart section, which will show you in a little bit more detail about where each player sits. So we've got green players here, so goalies, defence, left wingers, centres and right wingers. So green are people that are on our roster right now. Light green, if we've got any, would be people that are on our roster but not contracted. As an NHL, you won't see that. Blue ones are people that have a contract with us but are not sitting on the active roster for your team right now. So it might be that they're playing down for one of your farm teams, like Jackson here or Matt is. Or you'll get red ones. The red ones are people that are protected. Protected basically means that we have got the rights for that player. So it means that another team cannot go in and poach them. It's kind of like a dibs system, I guess. There is more to it than that, but on a basic level, that's the best way of trying to think about it. You've got your team, you've got your organisation, and then you've got prospects, I think is probably the easiest way of trying to explain that one. Okay, so if we move back to the active roster again, you'll also be able to see at a glance kind of how well each player is. So it's based on a star system. So it talks about the ability and it talks about the potential that I covered earlier. So It is rated out of 5. So if we look at the moment at, again, I will butcher some of these names, Kolyachonok, I might be wrong on that one. At the moment, he is a 1-star player. He's got the ability to move up to 2 stars. And having now already talked about the scouting, we get a rough idea of their end results. So scouting itself is based on an A to E system. If we quickly move here, so we can see the initial scouting grade is how thoroughly scouted he is. So the capital is how scouted he is. And the lowercase one is the success chance, how likely he is to hit his actual potential. So probably he's going to hit what we think, but he's not amazingly brilliant at what he does. We move back here again. One of the other key things to highlight when we look at the stars is this is based on the players in the league that you are currently in. So with that in mind, if you are playing in an AHL team or a CHL team, one of the really, really low ones, or a foreign league in another country, and you go and have a look at, for instance, this guy again, chances are he is going to look like a 5-star player because for your league, he would be. It is also worth remembering that each player has a salary, they have a contracted amount of time that they're going to be with you, and whether or not you've allowed or they have agreed to be waived down into the lower leagues. So if they've got waivers applied, that means we can move them downwards. If we head over to our status section as well, we can find that there are certain players that are actually injured right now as well. So we've got here an indefinite sore ankle injury. So we're paying him £7.8 million per year. We don't know when he's coming back because his ankle is sore. That's interesting. We've got Jay Marino. He has got a sore knee and he's going to be out for 3 to 4 months. There's a lot of soreness going on right now. We then come down here. We can see that he's also got a sore knee. He's going to be out 3 to 4 months. These people here, what you can do is if you want to get them out of your your cap, you want to make sure that you've got room to bring up other players. For instance, if I quickly just go to actions and we'll dress them. So we can only have 26 players on the roster. Only 20 can actually be dressed and on the bench for a game. So you can see here Weber, Marino and Björkstad. I think the pronunciation is on that one. They are currently taking up room on our 26-man roster and we cannot use them. So for Weber, what we might want to do is you might want to move him to our injury list. So we'll say yep. And that way that frees up a space. Whereas 3 to 4 months on these two, I would probably also move the pair of them on to the injury list. What we can then do is we can look at that injury list and we can see these 3 people are on there. And if we can monitor that, we'll see how many days they've got left before they can come off of it. I mean, these guys, they're going to be on it for a while, but you might find a bit of a countdown on smaller ones if, for instance, you've only just put them on. If we move back to the active roster, we have now freed up 3 spaces. So we could potentially come down to Tucson. We could look at some of their players and we could potentially move them up, which is a nice right click. Press that button there and you can bring them up. It does come with potential issues if you do decide to move them back down again. They might have to go through a waiver system, which on a day 1 tutorial, the easiest way of trying to explain it means that if you haven't got the right contract to say you can just drop them down, they will go onto a list and other teams can basically say, yeah, we'll have him, yoink, moved into their team, and we lose them. So you've got to be doing that a little bit sparingly. So the final section that we're going to look at before you eventually click that continue button and move forward a day is looking at the lineups and the tactics for your team. So lineups is basically where you would work out who is going to be your first choice, your second choice, your third choice, so on and so on. You'd build up a list of your players. What you can then do is you would then go into your lines. You'd set your lines based upon that. So basically what you'd do is you would look at the abilities. So say for instance we are going to look at our goalies. We would say that Connor Ingram is probably the better of the two goalies. Definitely better than Struber. So we'd say you are the best goalie, then you, then you. And then we'd set the last couple here. So we've got an idea of who. And definitely actually saying that, we would then just drag those two around because he is better. So first choice, second choice. These guys aren't even sitting on our bench, but if we aren't going to build a team, it will try and do it in order that way. And once you've gone through and you've selected all of these areas, you've dragged the players in, you know which way you want and who would be playing more often. You can if you want to. If you don't want to do that, you can just come up here and you say, hey, just do that for me. And then you can kind of see at the moment where we are. So right now we have lost two of our best defenders. We've only got two potentially that can play. Ideally, we would want between 2 and 3. Potentially, if we go back to the tactics screens, we would look at the maximum of 4, but we'd usually fill this entire section out first, build that up there. So what I'm going to do, because these players are off for a long time, I am just going to quickly move these two up. We'll move these two up as well, just for my own personal reference. What I kind of like to do as well is if there are players that I know for a fact that I am probably going to either trade or release, I've just got absolutely no, basically I don't want them anymore. Basically, what I usually do is I would just drag them down, make them into a separate section, purely for my own personal reference. You can as well, it's a little bit more advanced, but you can just right click and set them on trade block, which basically you said, I don't want them. You put them in a shop window basically. But I find that's just a nice little way for me to separate. And then if I just drag that down there, drag that down there, drag that down there, it just gives me a bit more of a visual of, obviously this would be up here and this would be up here and this would be up here. But it gives you a nice little easy visual way of seeing exactly who and what goes on your team. Now that you know which players are going to be where in your lineups, it's now time to set your lines. So if you go into this section here, this is what you're going to put out on a game-by-game basis. So you can, very, very similar to what you did previously, you can drag them into positions. I don't know why I'm putting a goalie into a shootout space, but for the purpose of the tutorial, you can just go in and get the assistant to do it for you. What it then does is it looks at your lineups and it places them appropriately. What it doesn't do a very good job of, though, is setting the roles. So the easiest way to do that, just go in, get the AI to do it for you, and it will set roughly what roles they're going to play in each game. What you can also do is set roughly how much ice time each line is going to have. What you may find is your line 4 may not be very good at all. So currently they're going to get about 8 minutes of ice time, but maybe we're going to give them a bit less. Maybe we'll give them 5 minutes. It does move it up to line 1, so you might want to just move that down a little bit, which will then put it down to line 2. Line 3 will then start getting some. So you can work out how often your best players are going to be on. Just bear in mind, more chance of them getting tired and being injured. If you were manually going in and setting your lines, you can do it via power plays, penalty killing, 4-on-4s or 3-on-3s, and you have the ability to go in and set kind of the goalie starts. So you usually get your 2 goalies, you've got your starter and you've got your backup, and you get a weighting system on how often the AI should switch them round. So I would also always do that, stop the AI from changing stuff, but you can go in and say, right, I want it to be the best rated goalie there, or I might want the hottest goalie to be starting, so the higher the number, the bigger the importance is on it. If you get a shutout, so the other team do not score, make sure you start the same goalie again. That feels like a definite. You can as well select on a game-by-game basis which one of your players you want to start. So you might find that you're coming into a playoff series, you might always want your starter starting, so you can just go in and say, yeah, a starter. Or again, it might be someone that is playing that you are close to in the league and you really want to win. You don't want the AI to select your backup, so you can just go in and go, yep, so we'll have the starter start on that game for us. With your lines and your lineups done, it is just time to look at your tactics. So you go into here and you get the ability to choose how often you'd pull your goalie. If you're down, you can do it straight away. You can leave it to the last minute. If you're down by 2 goals, exactly the same. You can do it as early as possible or leave it to the last minute. How fast the goalie switches. You get your tactical tendencies, so how attacking, you're going to be not very or lots, how aggressive, how rare or how often you back check, and what kind of pressure you put on, how often you hit, type of tempo that you play. This section here, if you are doing it on day one, it might just be easier for you to go in and get the AI to do it for you. But what it allows you to do is try and work out the fits. So you can sort of select a different tactic and shows who fits well on it and who doesn't. So for instance, if we look at the power play defense pursuit aggressively, we do see that a number of our better players it doesn't really work for. So what we might want to do instead is look at a different one. So this one here is even worse. We don't want to use that. But if we look at backup, some of our better players, Sergachev is pretty good. But at the moment, there isn't really any power play defense that works. That one might be the better fit. Again, you can just work your way through each one of these and just try and find ones. Like that one there, for instance. Probably don't want to use that one. That one, less people aren't very good at it. And that one there, have got a terrible fit. So this one might be the better option. Each tactic is strong against another one and weak against another one. So you might find that if you're playing a game and you notice in the blurb at the bottom that they're playing a certain tactic, it might be that you need to quickly pop in here in game and just tweak it to another one. At this point, pretty much the only thing that we haven't covered is trades, which is definitely not a day one thing, and training. Training is not something I really do myself. It is here if you want to do it. You can select what type of training that they get. I'm really not a fan of it. It's mostly just a tick box exercise. But it is there if you want to try and do that yourself. So for instance, this one here, you probably want to do goalie training, but I have already got my assistant to do it, so whatever I stick in here anyway is just going to be overwritten. But yeah, depending on which areas you want them to improve, you can just tick and add them to the certain groups. Trades, again, a lot more to it. You can pick stuff, you can say what you want, you can select draft picks as well to try and sweeten the deal and try and either get that player or get that other player off your books. But that's definitely not something to cover on a day one. Okay, with all of that said, you are now as armed as you are going to be, ready to start pressing that continue button. With that all out of the way, let's wrap this up with a bit of a giveaway. So I have one free copy of Franchise Hockey Manager 11 that I will be giving away. What I'm going to want you to do though is I want you in the comments section to write the word giveaway and then the reason why you feel that you should get a copy of Franchise Hockey Manager 11. I will leave it running for about a week and then I will choose one winner in there and will reply back to you and I'll ask you just to verify you are, first of all, who indeed you say you are, and then you'll get a free copy of Franchise Hockey Manager 11 on Steam. We'll wrap things up there. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free, like, subscribe, all that usual good stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.